So today's topic is Gods and Monsters, Space as Lovecraft envisioned it, our poll winning topic from back in September. Always tricky doing poll winners because I'm never quite sure beyond the title what the audience wants. What audiences didn't want, back in the 1920s and 30s when H.P. Lovecraft wrote his work, was most of his work. Today, he is one of the best known and most influential science fiction horror writers, receiving even the ultimate accolade of his name becoming an adjective, Lovecraftian, for stories of cosmic horror and existential dread. But he was quite poor when he lived, and fame only came much later. I suspect that's because a lot of his writing was in reaction to what science was starting to tell us about the immense scope of space and time, something the public didn't really understand yet. A generation later, this was finally sinking into the public awareness, and his work gained a large following and great acclaim. It's often hard to look through the worldview of our ancestors. They weren't stupid, at least no more than we are, but they had long believed that there was no history before that of mankind. They had no context for the scientific unveiling of the ancient, vast nature of our universe. Based on what they knew, it was perfectly reasonable to conclude that life, humanity, and our world were not much bigger or older than the known world they dwelt in. We're not just talking about the universe being huge and ancient compared to humanity. During that time, they were also discovering human civilizations much older and more numerous than they had previously been believed, and finding new places here on Earth, too. Science fiction of that time often featured the vast depths of the ocean, or the frozen wastes of the polar region, and endless civilizations hidden in mountain valleys, underground, on new islands, or in jungle depths. So here they were, finding ruins of lost civilizations older than we thought, and evidence the world is a million times older than what civilizations we had known of before that. This is the backdrop of the Lovecraft universe, and in his mind, these facts raise the question of how these ancient cultures could have died, and exactly how far back in time and space they stretched. Tied to this, much of the ruins we were unearthing were those most prominent and durable, such as large pyramids and temples. Lots of disturbing artwork was also uncovered in them, depicting rituals and magic, bloody sacrifice, serpents and monsters, and dark and hungry gods. It is no wonder they might have pondered if many of these civilizations collapsed under a growing taint of madness, or were consumed by those dark and hungry gods. Now, context matters. Cultures build their public buildings quite durably, especially temples and museums. A lot of our art, religious or secular, is quite gruesome even in context, and it doesn't take much misunderstanding to interpret even a piece meant to show the nobility of man in a fairly dark light. Of course, a lot of art is dark, and much of our nobility comes from struggling against our inner demons, and Lovecraft was certainly no stranger to that. Not even his most devoted fan would ever describe him as pleasant or cheerful. Modern humans, at least those who watch this channel, tend to look up into the starry night sky, understanding the immensity and age it conveys, see a lack of obvious civilizations, past and present, and come to the conclusion that no one else seems to be around, which leads us to believe that they likely never were. This in turn suggests the pathway from lifeless matter to advanced civilization must be extremely rare. Last week in Late Filters, we looked at some options for how civilizations as advanced as our own might instead be common, but doomed to be swept off the galactic scene before being able to colonize the galaxy. Many of those late filters revolve around us either never getting good enough at space technologies to explore the galaxy, or alternatively, getting very good at technologies for blowing ourselves up. But as we discussed there, and in other episodes, those kind of filters didn't solve much. Alternatively, some of the psychological reasons for civilizations crumbling work far better as late filters, and not only do these align more with the collapses folks like Lovecraft often envision, many offer scenarios for the rise of those dark and hungry gods too. A recurring theme in humanity's concerns is that we might grow idle and wicked in our prosperity, as is often felt to have happened with this or that ruling class. Technology makes that descent even darker. At least in those instances, it was only a small minority able to engage in such behaviors. Everyone else was busy working for their livelihoods, which kept them at least somewhat attached to conventional morals and concerns. That majority could wipe out that immoral elite if they became too decadent and unruly. A civilization fueled by robots, where everyone can enjoy idle luxury, can turn into something truly horrifying, especially as generations roll by and each successive one loses a little more morality and works a little less hard to instill morality in their own children. But hedonism is less of a concern than a certain sort of existential dread and despair, the kind that culminates in asking what the point of everything is, and whether anything we do really matters. This brand of nihilism is a central theme in Lovecraft's universe. Now in his universe, humanity is fundamentally a tiny dot on an old world in a vast and terrible universe, an irrelevance that cannot win no matter what we do, because all the great old ones, those dark and hungry gods, simply cannot be beaten, merely resisted, perhaps temporarily thwarted, or in the best case scenario, appeased. They maneuver the world and the universe however they wish and on a whim. They care nothing for the paltry matters of insignificant humanity,